Right now, we have Seattle Seahawks writer for The Athletic and award-winning journalist Michael Dugar with us. Welcome, Mike, and what's up? It's the Urban Sports Team, man. Glad you joined us. Like I said, it's Valentine's Day. I'm doing this for you, bro. You big time, man.
Hey man, I just appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, for
Hey man,
sure.
Mike, thanks for being on. We appreciate you and your time. But before we get into what we want to talk about with the Commanders and their new linebackers coach, I see you have a podcast. Can you tell our listeners about your podcast as well?
Oh, absolutely. Love a little shameless plug. The Seahawks Man to Man podcast is the name of the show. It's me and my co-host Christopher Kidd. We've been doing it for 7 years now, or yeah, since 2017. Seahawks Man, the number 2 man. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. The show's powered by Blue Wire Podcasts. You can find us on Blue Wire as well. We're on YouTube. The name of our channel is, you guessed it, Seahawks Man to Man. Man, the number 2 man. Hit that subscribe, like button. Even if you listen to audio, just go hit the button anyway because it helps us out. So appreciate you guys letting me plug that.
Cool, no problem. And also, it's exciting times in Seattle. You just have a young head coach in Mike McDonald. What's the vibe out there in Seattle about the new head coach?
Yeah, when you go from, it's not just that Mike's the youngest head coach in the NFL. He is the youngest head coach in the NFL who was hired right after the oldest coach, in the NFL, right? So the juxtaposition there is pretty notable, and the reaction locally has reflected that. It's the feeling of newness, freshness, all of these things that I just say Pete Carroll didn't feel like an old grouch, like he was the scout team quarterback, 72 years old, right? So it's not that just he was like the old grouch in the corner, but when you replace him with a guy who doesn't even have no facial hair, I guess Pete really didn't either. But like when you replace him with a young looking cat like Mike McDonald, who showed up to, his introductory press conference wearing J's and a hoodie and a blazer combo, like it just feels different, it does. You get a different vibe. The OC, Ryan Grubb, I don't think he's ever coached in the NFL before. They poached him from the Washington Huskies, or I guess he was at Bama, but you could get the point. And then they pulled the defensive coordinator. I forget how to pronounce his name, but he was the D-line coach, the Dallas Cowboys, the British cat. So, and he's getting a promotion. So you have all these guys who are in these roles for the first time, all relatively young, facial hairless cats, in these roles. So it's reflected in that. A lot of newness, a lot of new vibes, excitement, not full on. Like some people are like, yo, this dude better win too. If we're going to fire Pete, and replace his culture, go ahead and, you got to win right away. But yeah, overall, I would say it's a lot of excitement with the newness of it, the new feel of having that different guy, their version of, a D'Amico Ryans in Houston, or the defensive equivalent of hiring a Sean McVay. Like that's the expectation around here is be that the new hotness, like that line in Men in Black when he was like old busted joint, new hotness, Mike McDonald, not to call Pete old and busted, but Mike McDonald is in that analogy, the new hotness, right? So he's the Will Smith to the Tommy Lee Jones.
Hey, brother, appreciate that. So we're in the other Washington, D.C. The Commanders, they hired Ken Norton Jr., the former Seattle Seahawks defensive coordinator. He's a linebackers coach here in D.C. What can you tell our listeners about his coaching style?
He's one of those kind of old school, no nonsense guys. He played the game, which is so huge. The more I've talked to players, it's cool maybe if your head coach didn't play, maybe even if your coordinator didn't play, but man, guys just respond so much differently to a position coach that played the game, because you understand all the little parts of it, not just the on-field stuff, but the personal stuff too, all the stuff they have to balance. Some of these coaches are a little older, so they don't get the social media component too that their players have to deal with. But even then, they got kids. Usually these position coaches do, at least the older ones. So they understand at least dealing with it through their kids' lenses. So they get it, and Ken's been at the best of the best. He can show rings, when he shows the film of the 90s Niners, like he's balling, and he can show that. He knows what excellence looks like. And then now he's at the point in his career where he can show, like, hey, you see this guy, Bobby Wagner, that keeps making all pros and Pro Bowls, and a guy like KJ Wright, who's going to be a Ring of Honor dude, Pro Bowler as well, played 11 years in the league. And when you see these guys, like those are even the MVP of Super Bowl 48, Malcolm Smith, linebacker. So when you see these guys, these are Ken Norton products. These guys all swear by Ken. And so for these guys in Washington, not to say that they got a bunch of dudes who question authority anyway, but they can't. You can't tell Ken he'll know what he's talking about. You know, you can have constructive criticism because that's kind of the game go because you are on the field at the end of the day. But big picture, Ken knows what he's talking about. He's been a championship player. He's been a championship coach. So and he's molded some guys who have been championship players as well in his position group. And to hear guys like KJ swear by him, or even Malcolm, who I think Malcolm Smith was coached by Ken also at USC. So they go back even further. So to hear Malcolm swear by him, to hear Bobby swear by him, even a guy like Bruce Irvin, who's like more of an outside backer than an off-ball guy, but he swears by Ken as well. So you got your guys who swear by you. You've got the credentials. You just come in the building with a different feel. You can contrast that to someone like Mike McDonald, who you read some older stories about him, and he kind of recalls being in there like, man, I don't have, I stopped playing in basically high school, and here I am having to tell Terrell Suggs what to do. And Ken Norton doesn't really have that issue. He come in there and tell all them guys what to do, because he's done it, and they can't really buck back, unless he really screw up. So I think that's huge. That's a good starting point. It is, because when you're trying to establish a culture and a standard, you got to have some credibility on your side. It's earned. It's not given. So Ken kind of walks in the building like, yo, I've earned my credibility. I've earned my stripes. I can make you guys better linebackers. I've got the proof. So listen to me, follow me, and I'll take you where you want to go.
It's wild because I remember Ken Norton when he played for the Cowboys. I'm old now, right? Because I remember he played for the Cowboys.
Yeah, he used to punch the goalpost, man.
I know, bro.
Listen, but these brothers here in Washington are different. Linebacker play has not been the strong suit of the franchise, so they need this. But they pushed back on my man EB, Eric Bieniemy, and Eric Bieniemy had the accolades and credentials himself, even though he won Super Bowls. So the culture here is jacked. Hopefully that'll change, and hopefully Ken Norton will bring something different to the table and more success to that linebacking core that has desperately needed it since I can remember.
So true. So, I mean, as DC in Seattle, he was fired in 2022. Like, why was he let go?
Yeah, they underperformed. They underperformed for sure. Statistically, they had some stretches that were really rough. Like the 2019 Seahawks, first half of the season were really rough. That was their first full season without any Legion of Boom members. Like in 2018, they had Earl for about 4 games till he broke his leg, but then the rest of the season was no Earl. And 2019 was fresh. No Earl, no Cam, no Sherm. It had Bobby and KJ, but like no back end guys. And it was rough. They had some games they getting carved up. They got carved up in the playoff game they lost that year at Green Bay. And then in 2020, they just came out and they were awful. The defense was so bad. Those guys were mad after wins. I remember they beat the Cowboys in week 3 of the 2020 season. I want to say week 3 or 4. It was a shootout. Seahawks won 38-31, I want to say. And, man, if you go – they're on YouTube. Go watch Shaquille Griffin's press conference from that game. Go watch Bobby Wagner's press conference. They were Zoom at that point because of COVID, but still, you could feel it. You could feel like those guys were not happy. They gave up the 30 ball. And they only won because Russ was cooking that season. So there were some rough Ken Norton runs there. By 2021, that was the year they missed the playoffs. The defense also wasn't good. And you could tell Pete was like, something's got to change. I'm not going to fire myself. So let me go, bring some different guys in on that side of the ball. He got rid of Ken, and I believe his DB coach, Andre Curtis, too, at that time. And, they just underperformed. There was a standard in Seattle about how to play defense, how to rush the passer, how to create turnovers in the secondary. And particularly in the passing game, it was a very frustrating time when Ken was the coordinator. They had a lot of games where they were giving up a ton of passing yards. I think in 2020 against Atlanta, Matt Ryan threw for like 400 yards. They won the game, but Matt Ryan threw for like 400 yards. And I want to say they had 3 different 100-yard receivers. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in the game before. It was like Julio, Ridley, and maybe Douglas, I think. It was just nuts. And then the next week on Sunday Night Football, Cam Newton threw for like 360, and Edelman went crazy, and then that Dak game happened. And that 3-game stretch there was rough. And then even then they got shellacked by Buffalo, gave up a 40 ball in week like 8 or 9 of that season on the road. There were just so many bad games in the passing game. And I note the passing game because like when no one wants to be bad in either aspect, passing or running, but it does feel like when you are a bad passing defense, it's demoralizing. Like when guys are just bombing on you, that's rough. No one wants to get run on either, but like when you're getting bombed on, it's rough. And they eventually corrected that. They got some things together, but yeah, ultimately they were statistically underwhelming. They were underperforming, at least by their own standard. You ask some guys around the team at the time, they're like, "Yo, our talent isn't that good. That's why we're not that good." But ultimately, it's a result-based business, and the run defense was really solid as last year. I think they were like behind the Saints in yards per carry allowed, like 3 point something. It was a really good number. But they limited explosives. They would just give up a lot of passing stuff. So yeah, that's ultimately why they made that change after the 2021 season.
Oh, he'll fit in right here. Washington gets a bunch of explosive plays and passing yards all the time.
Yes, he could coach some backers though. That's the thing. Is Cody Barton still under contract? I can't remember.
No, he's a free agent.
Free agent.
He was horrible over here though. He was horrible over here.
Yeah,
he was good over there. He was good over there. Yeah.
He was fine. He wasn't bad here. He was just kind of scapegoated a little bit. And early on he had some really bad run fits that were just so glaring. And the run defense was really bad at the time.
That's the same thing.
And it didn't really help. Run fits are not something the basic fan understands, and this is very subtle, but I think it mattered in the grand scheme of how he was perceived. So KJ Wright in 2022 started doing a weekly radio show on the flagship station, and so that's the position KJ knows the best, and that's the position that was struggling at the time, particularly earlier in the season. So now we get all of these nuanced breakdowns as to why Cody's not performing or why Jordan Brooks wasn't performing. Whereas otherwise you wouldn't get that. Radio hosts can just call a guy out. True. But like KJ could be like, okay, yeah, no, not only are they playing bad, here's why. Here's what they're not doing, So it can alter perception in that way. If you got this guy, every time you guys give up 150 yards rushing on Wednesdays at 8, he's breaking down why, that just kind of hurts your perception for better or worse. It's not really KJ's fault. Play better, and he'll big you up, which he did later. So, yeah, he was okay. He was okay here. But I bring him up because he would be someone to attest to Norton's coaching style. His credentials as an LB's coach. It's way different being a position coach than it is being a coordinator. You can really hyper focus on the details. Like, for example, KJ loves telling this story. I think it was KJ's rookie year in 2011. KJ, he had really long legs. He kind of like called him like Bambi because he was just like, he's so tall for a linebacker. He's like 6'2" or something like that. So and he had a problem keep staying square to the line of scrimmage without crossing his feet, which is a big no-no for Ken. So what Ken would do is have him come to the facility like every day, like 6 a.m., put bands on his ankles, and then like set up trash cans in the indoor facility and have him like make sure he couldn't cross his legs. Like you have to shuffle without that. And that was as a rookie, and that helped KJ be a better linebacker. He would actually wear the bands during practice too. Super embarrassing, particularly for a rookie. But that's the type of detail you can afford. You have the time to do that when you're a position coach. You don't really have the time to do that as a coordinator or a head coach. You got so much other stuff to worry about, but you can take that time to really teach guys how to play the position. And again, when you tell your players to Google you and they see you winning championships, that helps, as well.
True. Hey, Ray, you had a question for him, right?
Yeah, man. This is a Washington question too. So when DQ was named coach of the Commanders, a lot of the Commanders media reached out to Seattle media like, hold up, the Seahawks had an opening and they didn't bring DQ back. So why in the world should the Commanders hire him? So the answer we got was, well, the Seahawks want to move on from Pete Carroll completely. So bringing back somebody from the past is going to keep kind of that Pete Carroll style going. But as last time I checked, Pete Carroll is still in the building there. He's not the coach, but he's still in the organization. So in your eyes, why wasn't Dan Quinn made the head coach of the Seahawks, considering he had success there years ago?
Yeah, I think this. I haven't like talked to John Snyder personally, right? So I'm projecting here a little bit, but I do think he was trying to strike a balance between maintaining the culture that Pete played a huge role in creating, while also pivoting to something new. And I really don't think they're going to be able to do that. That's like my prediction. I think you're just going to have to let Mike McDonald set his culture. You can't try to hang on to the Pete stuff, even if it worked. When you fire Pete, you fired everything. You can keep like the kitchen dude Stu and Mo Kelly, who's the VP of Player Affairs, and EK, who's their equipment manager. You can keep some of those guys around because those guys actually, I think, precede Pete. So you keep those guys, but in general, from my opinion, you fire Pete, you fire Pete. Like like the basketball in the meeting room, the rap music playing at practice, like Mike can keep some of that stuff if that's naturally him. But if he's keeping it in the name of preserving any part of Pete, don't do that. That's dumb. You should just be you in your own culture. So I think that was the vision, was keep the culture, but find some newness. And like you guys said, if you hire DQ, it feels like you're just keeping the culture, not really pivoting to something new. Whereas Mike Macdonald is fresh in that regard. But I think my prediction is over time, they're going to be like, we really need to just wash ourselves of Pete. We're going to have to let Mike not just live in this guy's shadow. He needs to be his own guy, his coach his own way, do his own thing, hire his own dudes, yada, yada, yada. So I think that was a big driving factor, is like getting something new. Really, that's it. And that's really, honestly, most of the main argument you can make for firing Pete is that you just want something new.
Yeah.
Because you look at guys like Vrabel and Belichick and Pete, who all hit the market at the same time. It's not like they forgot how to coach, right? You don't fire Bill Belichick like, man, duh, you don't got it no more. No, man, what he has, you don't lose. The same thing with Pete, and same thing with Vrabel, even though he's not a Super Bowl winning head coach. And it'll be the same thing whenever the Steelers move on from Tomlin. It'll be the same thing whenever the Ravens move on from Harbaugh. It won't be because those dudes forgot how to coach ball. It'll be because you just want something new. Which, when you're the owner, you can do that. So I think that the desire for newness, probably the more driving factor. And Mike McDonald was a hot kind of candidate too. Right? A lot of teams wanted him. I know the Commanders did as well. So like that was part of it. Getting the guy who was basically the defensive Sean McVay of this cycle, was pretty big for them.
All right, you cleared it up. Washington fans, you heard it. It's no knock on DQ. We're just trying to move on from Pete. So there we go.
I'm a fan of hiring DQ, depending on what your expectations are as a franchise. Because DQ's done it. He's been a head coach, and I don't care how hot shot you are of a candidate. There's nothing replaces experience. DQ's gonna know, and there's so much little stuff that comes up as a head coach that sometimes the coordinators don't even know that the head coach has to deal with. Just stuff from little tiny things about which choosing which day to do family day during training camp, or who gets allowed in the building, or how you're going to do guests or guest speakers, or what hotel you stay at on the road. Like, you got to just decide on so much little stuff, who does the speeches pregame, like all the things that the coach has to deal with that is routine versus stuff that just comes up. You get a call 3 a.m, like, yo, the local police chief just called. Our starting corner was hammered at this bar. They didn't want to arrest him. They wanted to call us. What do you want to do? Just little stuff like that you have to problem solve for the entire organization, on top of being this mastermind schematically, and on top of being the face in the media as well. DQ's done all of that. He's handled all of the situations, that come up, whether something political comes up. These coaches all these new coaches, they're going to be new coaches in an election year. And that it seems small, but no, that matters. Being a head coach in 2020 wasn't just about coaching ball. It was about managing COVID and a health crisis on top of an election year. And that matters in this culture. So when you're the head coach, you got to worry about that. When you're the position coach at DC, you can probably just sit in your room and draw up blitzes. But no, when you're the front man, it's different. So because DQ's done all that, handled all that, I think I was a big fan of any team hired him. Same with Raheem Morris in Atlanta. When you've done that stuff and you've handled that situation, you've gone against that coordinator, you've faced that deficit before, you've been in that overtime situation, that fourth down situation, that goal line situation, you can, so there's something to be said for that. Not to say that a new coach can't do those things, but it's a hell of a lot easier when you've experienced it already. And there's so much trial and error in being a head coach. So yeah, I think that's going to serve DQ well. There'll be some stuff that he screwed up in Atlanta, that he's going to be like, I'm not going to do that again. Nope. Whereas some of these new coaches going to be like, dang, I thought I handled that really well. Looking back, I screwed that up. And that's just kind of life in general. So yeah, I think DQ's he has a chance to hit the ground running in that regard, because he just knows how to coordinate a practice, how to handle all this. He has experience hiring guys. So I'm a big fan of the hire.
Thank you. And I like the perspective on like older coaches. I know a lot of people are a little negative, like on like the coaches who've done it in the past. Like you said, Bill Belichick didn't forget how to coach. Pete Carroll didn't forget how to coach. I mean, guys like that. I'm like, dude has like more championships than you even think of. These dudes have more championships than you can think of, and we're acting like they can't coach at all. And I'm like, nah, I don't like that perspective. Like I don't like anybody who says Man, I don't want no Bill Belichick. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, your team ain't winning. And how long? How can you say that? Like, off the rip. Like, how can you say that? Like, don't be dismissive of it. Like, that rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah. Belichick's problem is he should not get to touch personnel at all.
Agree.
But I also can see why he wants to touch it. I can see why at his age, you're like, I'd rather just control that if I can. Mm-hmm. And the other team's being like, well, you can't, so we're not going to hire you. That's perfectly fair on both sides. But I also think guys should get a second shot at head coach, unless you were just like unless the players didn't like you, then I don't think you should get a head shot, because that's probably just your personality. But like if you just had a bad losing streak, or you didn't get a quarterback that first time around, so I feel like some guys should definitely get a second shot, like if in New York, if that Jets thing doesn't work out, and if Saleh in like 4 or 5 years, something like that, coordinates another defense and then wants to get another shot somewhere, that other team should be like, yeah, we're not going to hold the Jets situation, that's not all he is. He's more than that. So yeah, I think guys should generally get a second shot, unless you're Urban Meyer.
So, definitely never in life.
He shouldn't.
Never in life. No way.
That Jacksonville thing is bad enough.
No. Yeah, I'll say this before I let you go. Just one last thing, because folks know who listen to the show. I'm a Geno Smith dude. Like, I like Geno. Like, what is his state? What is his status over there in Seattle? Like, what is his status? Is he still going to be the starter next year, or is it like a quarterback controversy? Or are they going to try to replace him? I need to know what's going on with Geno.
I don't know what they're gonna do. Full disclosure, I'm currently actually on paternity leave, so I'm not like totally tapped in and like in my reporting bag right now, because I'm just doing that stuff. But personally, I would keep Geno, because I really don't. The film don't lie. Like you can. We're in a kind of an era where if you scroll to Twitter long enough, you'll see someone post a graphic or a chart or something that either makes you angry or fits your agenda perfectly.
Yes.
Or you can do that. You can turn on the TV. I got FS1 on in the background right now. They can put up a graphic that says Brock Purdy sucks. They can put up a graphic that says Brock Purdy's the best ever, and find numbers and whatever to justify it, and clips too. But film itself does not lie. It don't. Eye in the sky don't lie. And when you watch Geno, you can see this is a guy who knows what he's doing. This is a guy who, in the NFC in particular, can play at the level that these other guys are playing at if you give them the other things that they have, right? Like I don't think actually Brock or Jalen Hurts, the last two guys to represent the NFC of the championship, are better passers than Geno. I don't think he's just as good passer as those guys. As a passer, you give him those O-lines or those OCs. The weapons are comparable. I think Geno's weapons have been good, but you give him those O-lines or those OCs, he'd be just fine. Like I don't think Geno can't do what Jordan Love just did in the playoffs, or what Jared Goff just did in the playoffs. He can do all that. But you look at the situations those guys are in, they're better mostly from an O-line standpoint and a scheme standpoint, which is why the Seahawks are probably going to change their O-line this offseason, and they've already fired their OC, right? Or not fired. They let him go to the Bears. But you give Geno that. He's definitely a guy who just needs a high level of support, and most quarterbacks do. Ain't nobody really a superhero except for Cam Newton in 2015. But yeah, Geno needs some support. And if you give it to him, we've seen he can ball. He can do it. So he's a little polarizing in Seattle. Some people they see him. I think he turns 34 in November, so they're like, let's get a young cat in there. But players love Geno. He's one of the guys. It's kind of rare that your quarterback is like one of the guys, because it's such like a CEO type of position. But he's one of the dudes. Hang out with guys in the offseason and go to a game with them, go to the club with them or whatever. Come to their camps, have throwing sessions in Miami. Like he's one of the dudes. And then he goes out and he plays ball. He holds himself accountable to a high standard. He's really good in the media, which is important. You can't get up there and say what other guys did wrong. You got to go up there. Geno goes up there every game and says, I got to play better. That's on me. I know for a fact the other guys have messed up, and I've known that because behind the scenes, and I've seen Geno go up there and say it was on him, knowing that the other guy messed up. That means everything in the locker room, Like you go up there and say, I messed up. Knowing damn well you didn't, but you're quarterback. You have to. Yeah. You can't get up on TV and be like, bro, ran the wrong route. No. That's how you get shipped off. Guys won't rock with you. So I think he's got the locker room, got the film, So I think a lot of person would roll with him. But you never know. John Snyder has only drafted 2 quarterbacks ever, Russell Wilson and Alex Magoo. And that's in like 14 drafts, 2 quarterbacks. So maybe he's itching to take another guy. I know he would like to. I don't know if that means replacing Geno, but yeah, in my opinion, Geno should be the guy for at least 2024 and maybe 2025 as well before you really be like, all right, we gotta do something different.
It's good to hear, man. I'm glad somebody else likes Geno. You know what I mean? I'm on X and everybody try to get me for Geno, and I've been like, nah, Geno, that dude.
You can't argue with results, man. You can't argue with how a guy's teammates feel about him and what the film says. You can have those two things. If you base your opinion on those two things, it's like honestly, it's not even an opinion at that point. You know, it's those two things are inarguable. You know.
No, I'm with you, totally with you. So before we let you go, how can folks catch you on catch your content and also catch you on social media?
Follow me at Mike Dugar on Twitter or X, whatever. At Mike Dugar, MikeDugar. It's on the screen as well. Everything is pretty much there. The newest episode of my podcast is always pinned to the top of my page. My author page at The Athletic is in my bio. That's the link that's in there. So if you want to, hey, what's this guy write? Boom, click that. It's all right there. And then any reporting I do just on X or Twitter or whatever is all on my page, obviously, too. So my Twitter's a one-stop shop. Hit that button on there and come along for the ride.
All right. Thanks, Mike. We appreciate you being on, man. Really do, man.
Appreciate
you
you.
Really get that Valentine's Day thing.
Hey, look, my man got a new edition. Congratulations, man. Go make another one.
Ray, you be going.
It's love day, bro. What we doing?
It is love day. It is.
All right, Mike. Thanks again, man.
All right, man. You guys have a good one.
Have a good one.